So in this tutorial, we're going to go through some of the changes and the new visualizations that are available in Dex since the last tutorial updates. We're not going to go through them all, but we're going to go through a few of them and hopefully show some of the main concepts that drive them. So I'm going to load the visualization.dex tutorial, which should be available in the release. I believe 0.6 and beyond should have this flow available. So I'm going to start top down, and over here the documentation. This is simply a component for documenting your flow. So out of the box, JavaFX offers an editor, and you can document your component flow inline over here. You can have as many of them as you want, and when you want to edit it, you jump to the editor tab like so, and you basically edit your content and add whatever you want. This is some new documentation. Or you could load your documentation externally if you want to work somewhere else, and I'm not really sure what's in this file, but let's load it up and let's take a look. It looks like it's just some sample workflow documentation. Whoops, I just messed something up there, but it doesn't really matter. And then when I jump back to the HTML view, I can see that everything is been changed to match what I just did. Alright, so next we have a component for reading the CSV, and here we're loading up the president data, and the reason I use this president data is it's pretty straightforward, easy to understand, and it's easy to correlate the data with the visual that you're seeing. So it's a good base example. So here I'm just loading it up. I could choose to limit the number of rows. For instance, I could limit it to 10 rows, click that checkbox, and then jump to view the data. And then when I read it, I have 10 rows, the first through 10 president. And I'm going to turn that off because I want to read all the data in. And then it's going to chug through. Now, it's useful to limit your input whenever you have huge data sets. So you don't necessarily want to chug through 100,000 rows or however large your data set is. And some cases it may be just easier to test the waters and do a limited input read of the data. Okay, I had a little difficulty there with the program, with the screencaster, but I'm back here. And next component is the TMI script, and what this is an internal DSL meaning domain specific language, and it's specific to Dex. It's the TMI stands for too much information, or table manipulation interpreter. I kind of like too much information because the one thing that this does is it allows us to pick out the data that we want in the order we want. And in this case, our data has presidency, president, party, home state. And over here we want to select it in a different order, and we want to omit the presidency column. So it's this particular statement within Dex looks very SQL-like. So it has a lot of key differences and a lot more capability. It's a lot more full-fledged language than just SQL, and it has all the basic components that you would expect to find in a scripting language. It's not really just database specific, but in this case we're setting Dex, and Dex is a special input that represents the however you want to think of it, the input table, basically this data over here, which consists of columns and rows and cells that constitute that data. So we're setting Dex equal to select home state, comma party, comma president from Dex. And over here we don't want to place any limitations on the contents of a column. So if you have a column that wouldn't normally be a valid identifier, it has spaces or special characters or whatever may be the case, then you just surround it in double quotes, and You can do some pretty interesting things here, like we could rename this to I don't know, renamed column, and then we jump over here, we hit the execute, and then it's gonna it's gonna pick up the changes. We could do a lot of other interesting things here as well, like put a where clause that includes a regex statement. So it has a lot of powerful capabilities, and probably have a different tutorial for this component on its own. But for now, let's just keep in mind that all we did is we filtered out one of the columns and we selected the columns that we wanted in the order that we wanted them. Alright, so moving on here, we have an add a column task, and this is dirt simple. So all we're really doing is just adding a column called size with a hard-coded value, a constant value of 1. Next, we're also replacing some long strings Democratic Republican with Dem Rep, and you can have any regular expression inside of here you want. You could do it in Groovy. There's so many different ways you could do it. You could do it in the TMI language, but this is really just a very convenient way to to filter out specific occurrences throughout a data set. And here we're filtering National Republican to Nat Rep, so it's just to make the column names a little bit, or the cell contents a little friendlier for our program to deal with, so we don't end up with long labels that scroll off the screen. Next we have the trim all, and there is zero configuration associated with this component. It's just going to go through your whole data set. It's going to go through your headers. It's going to go through your cells and your columns, your rows, and it's going to remove the white space from the beginning and the end of the component. And after we execute this, can't really see it here, but if the white space were visible, it would be gone here and visible over in this before we ran the filter. So I'm not really sure if we need to do this, but it's a pretty good way to, it's a pretty good general purpose filter for your data, because a lot of times data sets have this trailing white space, or the prepended white space. And now let's jump into a base view called the bubble chart. This is a layout issue that I have yet to fix. I'm not really sure if it's my issue or not, but I'm going to select the x-axis, I'm going to select the party, and you can see the bubbles have shown up on the screen, and I can see Virginia, there's an independent, there was a Democratic Republican, there was a Whig, and I can select multiple data sets. But before I do that, I can play with the opacity a little bit. I can name my axes here, home state, party, put a title on the chart. I could, if I had other numeric fields here, then I could put the I could size them accordingly. So maybe I want to go back here and I want to throw presidency in here. So jump back to the bubble chart, and now I have presidency as something that I could set on the bubble size. So maybe when I do that and I select these other pieces, now I can see bubbles that are sized based off of what term they served in, and maybe I can make opacity also a function of that. So some of these things kind of got too light, but probably size is the right thing. And I'm going to go back here and take that out because I don't think I want that. So re-execute the flow, and let's see, home state versus party versus president. So we can see multiple series all expressed in one bubble chart. So this really isn't a great way to visualize this particular data, but just trying to show some of the base capabilities here. So I'm going to jump over to the pie chart, and what this is going to do is it's going to group all the home states based off of size. So it's going to sum all the sizes, and here we get a piece of the pie that represents all the presidents that served from Ohio, and then we have New York, Tennessee, Massachusetts, and then down through Arkansas, Georgia. We have the ability to put the label on the top, on the legend rather, on the bottom, on the left, on the right. Again, this is just basically an out-of-the-box component, and we can turn the legend on and off. And this is basically a Java FX component. So we haven't quite hit some of the web views that are going to be interesting yet, but next. Here I have a column filter component, and what this does is list out all the columns. I can choose to include the columns that I select or exclude. In this case, what I'm looking to do is drop the size component, or I'm sorry, drop the size column, or the size column within the incoming table. And after I run through it, you can see size is no longer there. And now let's jump to the dendrogram. So this is our first web view, and it's a pretty simple view. Just basically a tree, a D3 based tree, D3 being Mike Bostock's data-driven documents. And it's nice because we can do things like select the data, we can collapse data that we want to take out of the picture, and you can see it's fairly interactive. And what's better is that we can also move this guy anywhere we want on the screen. So I can move this into the center, I can move the title, I can move the configuration. So let me move the config over here, and maybe we want to increase the font size, we want to increase the width and the connection length of this visual. Let's see. Probably let's make it look pretty decent here, and I'm gonna move this title down to the bottom, and I'm gonna call it Presidents. So from this view, if I want to publish it, all I have to do is hit Control S, and then pick the file I want to save it as. But I'm going to do something. Well, let me do this first. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to call it Presidents. Just calling it just by doing a Control S, saving it to my output directory, and I'm going to just pull up a browser that's pointed at that directory, hit a reload, and just hit the visual. And the one thing that's interesting is it retained the coordinates. So when we move things around, it remembered the fact that this visual this was originally up in the top left. I moved it to the center, and I moved the configuration over to the left. So that's a pretty nice feature. But usually, I may not want to have this configuration be here at all. So let me show you a few of the other things in the meantime. We can rotate it. I'm still working the kinks out of that. I need to figure out how to change this center of axis to the rotational axis to the middle. But you can see how live it is, and the theory behind these components is to make things as live as possible, just like Bret Victor, his Inventing on Principle lecture, which is awesome. Other things we can do here is we can disable the configuration with an Alt-C, re-enable it with another Alt-C that toggles that. And what I could do is I could decide to publish with that hidden, hit Control S, and then when I publish the page and I hit reload over here because we're looking at the new one, you cannot see the configuration. So that's great. That's a nifty feature. So next I'm going to jump to the chord diagram. So when we execute it, we got all these visualizations, and this one is pretty nice too. I'm gonna change this. outer radius, and I'm going to move this to the center of the screen so we can see it a little better. Maybe move the inner radius. We can play with things like the color map, so we can change this around through all the basic color maps. And I developed a new color map called high contrast. So I needed more colors in some visualizations, and I know the visualization scholars say that rainbows are evil, but in this case I really did need distinctive colors. So it's hard for me to see combinations that look like that and when I have a lot of data on the screen. So again, we have grays for the colorblind, and all the visualizations we're going to see from here on, I believe, have this color mapping capability, or this color scheme capability. And I'm gonna go with the one that I like here, and we can do all the same things that we did with the previous. We can increase, decrease the font size if it runs off the screen, change the width. You can drag it around to where you want, and again, we could save it, retitle it, whatever. And I'm not going to run through that in the interest of time. So this one, that's showing it all laid out, but I'm going to hit execute again because this one's kind of fun as it lays out. You can, it's kind of interesting to watch. It's basically your basic force diagram. It's all spring driven. I think I've actually covered this visualization before, but not with these added controls over here. We can interactively, well, I guess we can't do that. There's a bug. We can control the link distance, spread things apart, and this can be nice because it lets the diagram lay itself out naturally. And this is a pretty simple data set, so maybe we don't need to do that here, but when it gets more complex, it's nice to let the springs just unravel and see the natural layout of the data, play with these numbers. Maybe we decrease the friction to where we're in a frictionless environment here, and maybe we reduce the gravitational forces, allowing these guys to spread out and basically lay themselves out as they see fit. But in some cases, maybe we want to give it a little help, move things around. So that's basically the force diagram. So next is a force tree, and it's similar to the force diagram, only everything is connected into a central node here in a tree structure. So it has a nice little feature here in that I can collapse things. So here we start off with home state, and there I can look at the next level where I can see New York, Louisiana, different home states, and I can change the node size on the fly. I can change again the link distance. I can change opacity in this case. I couldn't do that with the previous one, and not yet anyways. And then I can change the gravitational forces, maybe increase, decrease the friction. I can click on New York, and then I can see that that I have wigs. I have one wig, one Republic. I don't know, maybe that's two. And then I have a Democrat as well, and then I can break it down some more, and I can see the presidents underneath there as well. Let's see. Again, we have the color maps, and we do have the grays for the colorblind folks, or whichever colors you're colorblind you have a hard time seeing. Hopefully there's going to be a scheme that that matches the disability. So I encourage folks to play around with this a little bit, get a feel for it, and I'm going to move on to the indented tree, which is not really that complicated. So we just hit execute again. Again, I can change the height, I can change the width, I can change the bar height. Probably want to add a little more width because it looks like the SVG kind of went off the screen. So I can change the bar width to match over here. Just depends. Do you want to see big bars, little bars, big not big data. I got big data on my mind. A big font size inside of there. Maybe want to change the title. Hello, hi, and that's really all there is to that visual. And over here we have another radial, and again, all these components can be moved wherever you want on the screen. And we have the node link tree, which is a nice way to be able to see hierarchical data. And in this case, it's a pretty compelling view. It's easy to see everything all at a glance, the way it's laid out. So it uses the space pretty efficiently, I think, and it's a pretty nice visual, especially if you need something like a still to put inside of a PowerPoint presentation or something. Again, I can't really read those fonts, so I need to increase the size a little bit, but this is about it for the node link tree. Now next is pack circles, and it needs a little bit of work. You need to figure out how to lay these fonts so that they don't overlap each other, but it's still a nice visual to give you some sort of idea of relationships. So kind of like a Venn diagram. These are all the members of home state. So we got New York, Ohio. New York has quite a few presidents that came from there. And again, we can click on the state, and we can click in, click out, and we can go in and take a look at the data within. So Virginia, Democratic, Republican, we had James Monroe, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. We can also change the opacity. That's pretty obnoxious. Or in this case, opacity is kind of nice. It lets you see through things, so that way you can see when things overlap. And blue on yellow makes orange. I think that works here. I'm not really sure. But padding is another nice thing. We can put more separation between these, and hopefully you can play around with this a little bit to get rid of some of the overlapping that occurs. We can also set the size of the visual overall, and then we can change this to match. You'd have to have a really big screen for that visual. Next is partition layout. It's really a similar view, only it lays everything out pretty space efficiently. And here we have the same hierarchy: home state, New York, Democratic. We can easily zoom into that, zoom into this, quickly get to the data we want to see. And again, we can change the height, we can change the width, we can change the font size, whether that makes sense or not. And we can also change the title. We can move things around however you want to lay it out. And then when you want to save it however you want. And when we jump back, whoops, wrong one. When we jump back to this, we see it just like we saved it. We move the title down below. Actually move the title over here in the way, but we can still interact with it. And again, Alt C, we can enable and disable the configuration bar. Alright, so next is Starburst. Change the color scheme on this. I probably need to add some color map stuff to this, but yeah, it's a radial layout. It's very similar to partition and pack circles. It's just a radial layout of the same. Move the title, change the radius to whatever size makes sense. And scroll off the screen. You can set the height and width of the SVG just like the other ones, and change the font size, whatever makes sense. Next is the tension map, and it's I kind of like this view. As you scroll over, it shows the interconnections. It may be easier to see when we make the font size a little bigger. Again, I'm gonna change the. Well, here's an interesting thing. We can change the radial range. Should probably add some rotational controls to this, but let me, I don't see height and width. I'm not really sure why they aren't there. But oh, because it's margin, because it's control with margin. Been a while since I looked at this one, so obviously it's not quite as intuitive as I would like, but all the basic controls are there to be able to produce the visual that you want to see. So as a radio layout, relations are connected and with arcs, and the arcs will highlight as you move across them. So next, last but not least, and it looks like I got a showcase of bugs here, but here's the tree map, and I really hate that choice of colors there. I hate that one even worse. Let me re-execute it. So this is something I have been working on, and I have a bug, cannot figure this out for the life of me, but there is occasionally a chunk missing in the tree map. But working on some of the features, trying to add a gradient to give the illusion of 3 dimensions. If I can't figure that bug out, I can always fall back to the working version that I had before. I think well, I'm not going to jump to that yet, but the nice thing about this is you can see the fonts got bigger. We can see the Texas presidents, Eisenhower, the 2 bushes, and it's a pretty nice view. Again, not really sure what happened with that chunk, and I do have this color map bug right now, but we can interactively set the height and width. Well, or can we? Tell you what, I'm going to move on from this one, though I'm kind of curious how I left that in such a bad state. But okay, enough of the tree map. I'm obviously going to have to work through some issues with that. Here's one I have spent quite a bit of time on, and it's the parallel lines view. So it's a really nice view in the sense that it has a lot of interactivity. We can mess around with the height, the width. We can change the font size accordingly. But we can also change the opacity, because that way we can see these names easily through the lines. That's something you may want to do. We can make the headings over here, the columns, a little more easier to read. And let's change the maybe we want to change the color scheme on the fly, and I'm gonna go with my high contrast again, because I like the contrast, and that's fine with the title. So I'm gonna save this view, and I'm gonna save it into that same president's file, and there's a reason for that. The WebKit has an issue with inside of Dex. I expect this to be fixed, but the paths aren't fully supported. So I'm going to jump to this view so I can show some of the interactivity. As I scroll over it, I can see the tooltip of the home state, Ronald Reagan, Californian from the Republican Party. And what's really nice about it, it looks like I just scrolled off the viewing screen here. So let me, whoops, did it again. But let me do this. Is I can highlight those things that I care about. So let me change the opacity something a little darker, and I can change the stroke width. I can go through here and I can say, okay, let me select a range here. I want to see all the Democratic presidents. So easily I can see that, hey, George Bush. I'm sorry, that's Barack Obama. Guess it's not that easy. I could see Bill Clinton. Maybe the stroke width is a little too large, but who are the Whig presidents? I don't know. Looks like we have Zachary Taylor from Louisiana, Henry Harrison from Ohio, and so on and so forth. So it's easy to be able to be able to select those subsets that you want to see. And in some cases, you can do some pretty interesting things with it. So let me, I'm going to select all these. Well, let me show one more thing before I jump to this. And I don't really want it to be a black tree map, so let me just throw that out. Another nice thing is, what if I want to see multiple views at once? So I can just hit click, and then I hit shift, and then I can see these views, all at the same time. I could, I could interact with these guys still, and this can be useful. So maybe I want to see the parallel lines while I look at the data. That too, may be a nice feature for some people. I find it pretty useful. So I'm going to go click all these guys. Well, not all those guys. I'm going to click all these guys, and I'm going to disable them like that. Actually, I probably do. That's fine. So then I'm going to go over here, parallel lines. I'm going to re-execute it, and then just show one of the nice things about this visual is change the stroke width. Is what if I just want to take a look at the balance of power between Democrats and Republicans over the years? So I can map this. I can see, okay, well, it looks like Democrats have had a steady flow of presidents along the way. And then go over to the Republicans, and I could see that, well, it looks like the Republican Party wasn't formed until later in the Union. I know this from history anyways, but you can see the Republican dominance during these consecutive presidencies versus the Democrats. And maybe what you want to do is you want to take a look at the at the balance of power over the years, and you just cycle through the presidencies along the way. And I think I'm running over my time limit here, so that's going to be it for this tutorial. Thank you.